So this is a little slide, an introduction to Nuget, how to use Nuget effectively with package restore, and a few other tips and tricks as we sort of go along the way. So about me, Jay Tring, Technical Architect and Lead for the Phoenix Platform. You can see the latest Phoenix Platform development at phoenixplatform.com and the latest Tiger Spike development at tigerspike.com. So today we're going to cover what is Nuget, which I think most people know. If you don't, let's get a quick recap there. How to configure Nuget. So there's nuget.config, package restore, and how to use it effectively. This also includes working with CI and a few approaches that are available there. How to publish Nuget packages and best practices for working with that. So again, that links back into CI and how to automatically publish your own projects to Nuget. The Package Explorer, which is a GUI tool available for working with and creating Nuget packages. A very simple Nuget package, which I created earlier. There's a few final thoughts, and also there's a sample of something you can use Nuget for, and a connector into Visual Studio working with DTE. So there's a few nice tips and tricks as we go along. So Nuget itself is a repository for software packages. Now, a software package, as you can see on the slide, is a zip file with PowerShell commands and binaries, which is effectively, that's what it is. It's a repository of a load of zip files. The great thing about Nuget is the UI in front of it, which allows you to search for any package you want, any type of package. So previously I had to search for I could develop my own CSV importer and exporter. However, having a look on Nuget, there's plenty there, and it's not my favorite thing to do in the world. So searching for CSV, I can see packages that have been updated in the last year, packages that have been archived, if you will, and packages that are still being developed and commented on. So that gives me the ability not only to have a central repository for getting software, but making sure that the one I pick is still being maintained and has good enough documentation for me to commit to as a solution. Currently, there's about 24,000 packages available on Nuget, so that's unique packages. There's a hell of a lot more that are duplicated different versions, etc. But for uniqueness, 24,000 is a good number to start with. Nuget, package restore, and the whole mechanism allows for easy version dependency. So it's quite simple for me to grab a certain version, update it, roll back to a specific version, and work with an upgrade path that suits my development process. Packages that come down, as I said, they're zip files, but they can contain PowerShell commands. So that the service helper Nuget file that you can grab from nuget.org, once installed into your project, console app, web app, however you want to use it, it will transform, add entries in your web config or app config, depending if they exist or not. So adding service helper into a blank project will then go in, check if the entries are there for the configuration section, and also for the service helper section. If not, it'll insert a sample, so you've got something to work with straight away. It'll also open up a web page directing you to the service helper version and give you the latest rundown of any changes related to that version. So that's a very simple way that we can use PowerShell to interact with the user and make their life a bit easier. There's a lot more extensibility there, and there's a great number of examples on the internet of how to do that. Automated package restore is great locally and through CI. So any dependencies that don't get committed to source control, for example, can be restored as part of the build process. If you take that a step further, the build process can restore a DLL or a package and then add it to source control as part of one step in that CI process. So if something gets missed, it can be automatically downloaded and then put into source control for later use. There's also an optional command line interface. So working with Nuget, you can do nuget.exe, you can work with the package management console, or you can use the UI and search that sort of way. One great tip about Nuget is there's a nuget_profile.ps1. This is just a PowerShell script that hooks into the package manager console and allows you to define your own functions and methods to use within the package management console. So I've got an example of that later, but it's really a very simple, easy way to increase productivity and add functionality within your project. It's kind of similar to the old Visual Studio extensions, just that it's very simple to add a function and then work with it. So Nuget itself has a nuget.config, which I alluded to earlier, and there are a few key points in there that really sort of improve productivity and make things a lot easier to work with. So one of which is the repository path, and I've seen lots of projects use the packages folder in that specific project. So if you've got different tags, labels, branches, they'll all have their own packages folder and you're duplicating DLLs for each individual tag, label, or branch. So the problem there is that if your project's only about 5 megabytes, your dependencies are 300. You've only got a branch, label, or tag, 10 times, and you've eaten up a hell of a lot of space, not only locally, but on your development CI box as well, assuming that you clean off the downloads after they've been built, which most people do, I'm sure. So package restore is a for free thing. It can be enabled locally without too much hassle, and I believe there's integration with Jenkins and Visual Studio Online. So this can be enabled quite easily, and then packages downloaded and then built as part of that process. You can also, if you're not happy with automatically restoring, you can enable or restore packages from the package management console. There's a little button if you want to restore packages that are missing, or from there you can enable automatic restores. The package sources. So within the package management console window, there's a drop down to define which source you want to pull Nuget packages from. The standard offering is Nuget.org, obviously, but one can add in different package sources. So on my local machine, I've got a directory of Nuget packages that I build, and from connecting to the local source through the package management console, I can install them in and test to see whether that package is working, which is fine, and that's great for local development. Where this comes in real use is when there's internal packages. So as part of a CI process, building a Nuget package can then be deployed to an internal feed and then be made available to all the developers who are working on that project or need to use the latest version. Or it can be there to actually be a mirror of the Nuget.org. So if you imagine the number of packages that you're restoring and downloading in a daily development frame, you can put those packages into internal feed and they come down a lot quicker. One of the best practices that's recommended is that you mirror the Nuget.org feed, especially with CI, because it's not always available, and also packages can be deleted, but that'll come a little bit later. Finally, your Nuget.config, because you're starting to put these global configuration changes in, specifically repository path, this gives you a specified folder to download all of your Nuget dependencies into. So within my local configuration, I have a folder which is dependencies, and no matter what project I'm in, all of the Nuget files will go into that folder, which is great because most of the time I'm reusing packages that I've already downloaded. So already I can create a project quite quickly. I don't need to be online. So package restore and Nuget feed. So again, I touched this a bit earlier, but mirroring packages from Nuget.org in your own repository or in a common folder is definitely the way to go. It's a lot faster, it's less error prone, and if Nuget.org does go down, you've still got access to all your dependencies. Within the CI process, again, internal Nuget feeds are great for publishing to, and then Octopus, the deployment manager, can be used to push through straight away without any problems. Again, there's support for Jenkins, Git, TFS to all work with package restore. And again, Nuget is 99.9%, but I've had it not be available for a while. So examples of how to use package restore and CI. So here we have a local common packages folder, which is defined by the repository path of where we want the packages to go, and that's in grey because it's not in source control. And then any packages that can be resolved through that location are. If not, then it propagates out to Nuget.org and downloads it to the local common packages folder. So again, by taking this simple approach, you're not duplicating DLLs, you've only got one version stored locally, and then it's referenced by all of your projects. And cuts down the amount of space needed for all your projects and the amount of space needed in source control. Package restore and CI. So again, you've got local common packages folder, and then as part of the sources parameter within Nuget.org, you can define a package source to then navigate to before Nuget.org. So local common packages folder is your start, and then it progresses to the internal Nuget feed if that package isn't available locally, if it's not available within the internal Nuget feed, and then it goes to Nuget.org. So the great thing about here is that, for example, the service helper, there are continual builds that marry up with builds within Phoenix. So as those builds are deployed to development and UAT and staging, the internal Nuget feed has the most appropriate Nuget version of the service helper available. So it allows us to test against code that's been deployed to UAT staging through automated testing, but it also allows for the latest version of the service helper to be used to start testing new functionality, beta test, and get some feedback as early as possible. So again, that's a great way of working with internal NuGet feeds. The final approach, and this is the redundant package restore that we use within Phoenix, we have a local common packages folder, but this is in source control. So you can think of this as your dependencies folder, where all of your DLLs are stored. The great thing here is that because it's in source control, if another developer in the team adds a load of dependencies that are required for a new project, I can download them as part of my normal get code in the morning, and they're available. Alternatively, if I'm not using that project, then I don't have to get the dependencies folder, and I can avoid updating that as I want, and package restore will grab them and put them locally, and I'll just manage that conflict later on. There are a few different ways to work with it. I'm quite happy to have it in source control, get everything in the morning. At least then it's there for me to use when I'm offline on the train or whatever. Again, internal NuGet feed, we've covered that before, and then propagate to nuget.org if the package isn't available in the previous two. So the big difference between this slide and the previous one is that the common packages folder is in source control. So jumping on to NuGet packages and basically automating the building of NuGet packages and putting it up to nuget.org. So some of the conventions and best practices are that even though you're building from CI or doing a manual build to nuget.org, it should still have the same package ID. The reason for that is there's as you can see down the bottom right for possible versioning, there's the ability to append -pre-release. So that then gives you the ability to say pre-release is from CI, and then the absence of pre-release is a live version. So it's the same package ID, and you give people the ability to specify whether they want to do pre-release or the latest version. Don't inject sample code into your release package. I completely agree with this. So the point this is making here is that when I install a package, I then don't want to have a test folder and then 10 different test CS files or whatever I'm using created. You know, it's not what I want. I want a package to achieve something. I don't want it to dilute and contradict what I'm doing in my project. There are a few sort of do's and don'ts configuration changes. I've read a few articles saying that should never be done. My view on that is that if you're going to install a package, I'd rather a configuration change was made so that it works, as opposed to having to go through all the readmes and then look to how it can then be configured. It's a pain in the ass. Automate configuration changes, download it, and get it working. NuGet packages. Once you uninstall the package, it should undo everything it's done. Completely agree. The ability to install easily and uninstall easily is one of the key benefits of NuGet. It's clean and it's simple, so that should be followed. Semantic versioning, yeah, pretty simple. And finally, consumer packages, releases and pre-releases, again, separate from your CI nightly builds. So going back to what I said before, your CI builds can deploy -pre-releases, and that's their entryway into the NuGet site, and then manually push live deployments. Alternatively, live deployments to NuGet can be automated also, and there's a script on nuget.exe to do that, and that's effectively what we do for the service helper. We have automated CI builds released as pre-release, and then when we've done a final release to live and the code's ready to be used, we then do a build of the service helper so it's available and people can update as they wish. So Package Explorer, and I'll quickly open this up now. Is a very simple UI tool for working with NuGet packages. So if I jump into Phoenix Service Helper latest version, the pre-release, again, pre-release. So we've got a few different components here, and the slide covers this as well, so I'm not going too much detail into what each individual bit does. But you've got the ability to create a feed. You can then specify the components that are then consumed by nuget.org. So this information is used by the website to determine whether the search results match your package, provide extra information. And there's a few different plugin managers and so on and so forth. It's quite a simple tool, and again gives you the ability to publish to nuget.org quite simply. Again, when working in the CI environment, you don't want to use a UI tool, so the nuget.exe command line is the best way forward. So within a package itself, there's the app.config. So if you remember earlier, I was talking about adding a configuration if it didn't exist. So the key component here in the app.config section is config sections transform equals insert if missing. So if there's no entry in the section for service helper, it'll add it. If there's no entry for the service helper section within the configuration area, it'll add it. And then install at PS1. Again, as I said before, opens a website passing the parameter of the package ID. So we were looking at version .18. So version .18 will be loaded in the website. Again, lib.net45 is all your files. So package manager console, the command line, the package manager console has IntelliSense. It's pretty easy to use when you get used to it. It's just making that commitment to install and uninstall and get packages from command line. A few tips and tricks: get package, list available filter. Again, we'll give you back packages that match the criteria. You can get a package, update a package, or uninstall a package. You can extend the package manager console with commands, and this is what I was talking about earlier with the Nuget profile.ps1. So with that PS1, you can access the DTE, which is exactly what the Visual Studio extensions use to hook into the IDE, allow you to click a button, open up dialog boxes, etc., etc. So what I'll do is hook into that file now and give you a quick example of how to use the set font size, the sample project I've got that works with Nuget, and I'll open up the PS1 and give you guys a little visible example of how that works. So the sample I'm going to go on to now is a sample Nuget package. It's a cut down version of one of the Phoenix commands, and it will create a few different projects and then add references and then allow me to deploy the project to the Octopus server. So if I go into Visual Studio here, I'll create a new solution file. So I've got a blank solution file, I've got my package management console available, and if you remember earlier I said that you've got IntelliSense. So install -package tab enumerates all of the packages within this feed. So the feed is local sample, which as I said earlier was my local directory, and the only one in there for this example is the sample Nuget package demo. So I'll go ahead and install that into the solution itself. And this isn't a best practice by any means. It's just one of the things you can do, and one of the more hacky things you can do with Nuget packages. So now we've got a solution, and we've got the ability to scaffold within that solution. So I can create hyphen and then tab. You see these are the different options I have within that Nuget package. So I'll create an API service. We call this solution Amazeballs, so to follow convention. And I want to create an API service. Let's create a web service. There's a few different other ones as well. But this will go through, and if I collapse those, you can see it's created an API, which is a web project, a business tier, a data tier, and a model tier, and the references between them. So this is a very simple n-tier approach through scaffolding. So this is similar to the MVC, create view, create list, etc. Back in the days of MVC 2 and 3. One of the great things with this is it's very simple. It shows you the power of what you can do with the DTE, which is effectively anything you can do through commands here, add class, etc. The COM wrapper exists in the DTE to then do it for you. So some of the more complex things you can do is execute TTs, add in T4 templates, run the TTs, and get the desired outcome. I can do a deployment to let's do it. So create Octopus project, and then as you can see from here, we have the ability to say API web service API created with template API. So that's now gone to Octopus, our deployment server. It's taken the name of the solution, and then because it knows we're working with tigerspike.phoenix, it'll grab Amazeballs It'll then create the project. It'll use the template API, which has a set of steps that'll then be created, and then it'll try to push that to the dev server because that's what's been assigned as part of this call. So again, it's not just integration with Visual Studio, it's integration with how you work to speed up your development practices. One of the sample things that I love, and this is actually from the Nuget site itself, is set font size. So, oops, if I put numlock on, that'll help. Probably 30. So I've set the font size here to 30, and one difference between this and using the magnifier is that this sets the font size globally. So effectively what it's doing is going to the options, is going, I think it's text editor, general possibly, or languages general. It's been a while since I've been here. There's the ability to specify the font size, fonts and colors probably. So we've set the font size here, which means that this is a global change. So any class that I open now adheres to the font size of 30. So with the magnifier, it's only per page. Doing demonstrations and going through code to do peer reviews, etc. This is really useful. And then again, the other side of that is that I want to go back to normal size, go back to 12. So 30, 12, and again, great for demonstrations, great for going through. The last thing I'll show you is the actual PowerShell file itself, which again, it's just a PowerShell file with entry in there. If I could remember where it's stored. It's load up something else instead. So again, this is just a sample PowerShell file. Define a few variables, and again, you can wrap this in a function, which all the PowerShell's command here is set font size to 12. So there's a function there that takes an integer. That's pretty much it. I hope it's been useful, and thank you very much everyone who's watching.